This is my pleasure to introduce our alumni instructor for the day, Grace Flores Robles. Did I get that right? Do I need to roll my R's? Robles?
That is great. Honestly, I don't normally roll my R's, so you did a better job.
I'm an R roller. So I got Grace Flores Robles is a fourth-year psychology PhD student at the City University of New York Graduate Center. Her research examines how people see and sanction system level injustice. In case you did not know, you are in great hands today. And I am so proud of this woman and so excited that she's your instructor today. I'm going to disappear and she's going to take over. Bye, y'all.
Okay, I guess it is my turn. Hi, everyone. It's good to see you again. I saw most of you on Sunday, I believe. So great to see you. Great to see some familiar names. So today we're going to be talking about surveys in the digital age, excuse me. So I know you've already answered this in your survey, but for the sake of helping me today, maybe something has changed in the last few days. I would like to know how many of you have experience creating surveys or questionnaires. You can go ahead and give me a little thumbs up, raise your hand, drop something in the chat. Amazing. Looks like quite a few of us. So today should be a review of some stuff that you've already done. And how many of you have worked with MTurk or know what MTurk is? Okay, a lot of thumbs or a few thumbs up. Okay, great. So if you're not familiar with MTurk, it's just an online platform where we can recruit participants for our surveys. We will actually not be using our own accounts for this. So the process of working with MTurk should be a little bit easier for us, but it's great to know where our data is coming from. So you should know what MTurk is, even though we will not be doing that directly ourselves. Okay, so we had some pre-arrival materials. Hopefully you saw the videos. If you didn't, that's okay. I'm going to do a brief recap. So we learned in our videos that there are two types of data that we can use to answer our research questions. Usually there's ready-made data, which is big data, and we scrape this from the internet. But for the sake of today, we're going to be working with custom-made data. And this is stuff that we create ourselves or we collect ourselves, and that's where surveys come in. So we use surveys because, as you've probably learned, sometimes big data is inaccessible. We saw that with the shift in ownership of Twitter. APIs got so much harder to work with or get access to. And surveys also allow us to ask specific questions. And so it's really important to learn how to use surveys. Like any type of research, surveys have limitations, and that we can have bias and vary in the way that we ask our questions, and also there's limitations and variance sometimes in our surveys. And what I mean by that is sometimes our responses are very inconsistent. So if you see this high variance side, there's no consistency, so it's really hard to make sense of what is going on. And sometimes when we have low variance, we're not accurate. So we can see that even here where the dots are close together and they're pretty consistent, we're not actually hitting the target that we want to. And again, this is all stuff we saw in our pre-arrival video. So hopefully this is a review for you. We can also have errors that are related to representation and measurement in surveys. And so what we do to try to minimize that, and what I'm hoping you're going to do today as you're creating your surveys, is that we want to use measures that are previously developed and validated. So your participant exercise will have links to the Pew Research Center, which has a lot of great questions about things like policy, things like how to address racism. And so I'm hoping you'll reference those as you're creating your surveys. And I want you to think about what you actually want to study and limit yourself to asking questions only relevant to that thing that you want to study. This is probably the hardest part if you're not familiar with surveys. And that's just because there's so much you can ask, but we want to hone in on our variable or issue of interest because we don't want to add extra noise. And we're also limited in how long our surveys can be. And so you really want to make sure you restrict it. And then finally, I want you to think of the questions you want to answer with your data. And this is also very challenging if you're not familiar with surveys, And that's because sometimes we create our questions, and then once we get the data, we see that we actually can't do any analyses with them because of the way that they're structured. And all of that said, I'm going to walk you through some ways to improve the ways that you ask questions in surveys so that when you're off and working on this on your own, you are able to ask questions that you can actually analyze. And please feel free to ask questions throughout. I know this might be new to some of you. So there are 4 levels of measurement that you can use when you're asking questions in research. There's nominal variables, ordinal variables, interval variables, and ratio variables. I'll go over each of these, so don't worry if these terms sound confusing. With nominal variables, you're mostly using them to categorize groups. So these can vary in kind or quality, but they have no actual mathematical value. So if you ask these in your surveys, these are mostly to just find out what groups people belong to, but you wouldn't actually do most analyses with these. So this is something like when you ask your demographic questions, and you're asking about gender identity or racial or ethnic identity and so on. Ordinal variables are a little bit more advanced than nominal variables in that they have meaningful values, but there's unequal intervals between them. So this can be like when you're running a race and people are in different orders, but they actually mean something different. So first place can be very far advanced as opposed to second place or third. Interval variables, which are the most relevant for your surveys, have to do with equal interviews. So this is where you're going to be focused on in your surveys. You're going to be asking questions like how satisfied you are or how much support you have, and your numbers here have equal spacing between them. Each one means something different. And then ratio variables are the most advanced in that they have equal intervals, but they also have a meaningful 0, which just means that you're asking something like how satisfied you are and you have a 0, it would mean an absence of satisfaction. For the sake of today, you want to try to include mostly interval and ratio variables. So you want to ask questions on a scale from 1 to 7 or a scale with frequency where the 0 means something, because this will give you the data that you can actually analyze. Which leads me to today's activity. You're going to create and deploy a survey with help from Mathematica TAs. I will be jumping around to ask you what you want to survey people about, and I will help you develop the surveys if you need that help. Our Mathematica TA, specifically Jessie, who I believe is here, will help you launch that on MTurk. And then we will take our break and hopefully we will get data. And when we come back, we'll be actually cleaning our data and analyzing it. And we'll come together and talk about the surveys that we created and what we found and what challenges we experienced in developing surveys. All of this information is online with a lot more details. Does anyone have questions about this? I know that was kind of a lot of information. Doesn't look like we have questions. Okay. You are all, I believe, assigned to groups based on how many of you are familiar with surveys and with MTurk. And so hopefully you have someone who can kind of lead you if you get a little bit lost. But again, I will be around to help out.
And I'm going to jump in briefly and just review the schedule. Is that good timing for that, Grace? All good? Awesome. Okay, we just want to remind everybody that the exercise for today is on the website as always. And we're going to drop your rooms in the chat box again, just as a reminder, because we've got a good amount of information there. So we're going to make sure it's at the bottom for you. I also want to leave a little bit of time for Q&A in case anybody has any overarching questions. But let's review the schedule real quick. Abril, can you please screen share for me? All right, so we're looking at today's schedule. As always, the pre-arrival materials and the takeaway sheet are there at the top. If you haven't noticed yet, if you notice any mistakes, you can offer a comment and we will fix that, or any additions. The participant Zoom links, everybody, almost everybody made it here this morning. We got that fixed for y'all with the links at the top for the day. There were office hours this morning, 9 to 10. We finished logistics. We will finish introduction to the group exercise early, so you'll have a few extra minutes to try to give you extra time. You will spend 10:30 to 11:30 in your morning group exercise. There are also content-specific office hours. If you have not noticed in the breakout room, as always, in the office hours, content-specific, there are a couple folks there. So Jesse, who will be deploying the surveys later, and also Megan Baker from Mathematica. They are both there waiting for you to come see them. Don't leave them lonely. Go visit them. 11:30 to 12, you all have a break. Then we will see data nutrition from 12 to 1. 1 to 1:15, you will have a break. 1:15 to 3 is your afternoon group exercise. Again, our TAs are there again. You'll get another break from 3 to 3:15, and then we'll round out our afternoon debriefing the exercise, and I'll close out with logistics and answering any of your questions. So we have 5 minutes left. I would like to give you back that time unless anybody has any questions. We can drop screen sharing. There is a question. I see a hand up. That would be, whose hand is up? Beth.
Where it says content specific TA time, what is that content like for today, like around surveys, or what does that mean?
Yes,
content specific.
yes.
Okay.
So we have a great question. We have 3 types of office hours. So in the morning from 9 to 10 and at noon from 12 to 1, there are technical skill office hours. So that's R and Stata or Python. So there'll be people in those rooms to help you specifically with those things, 9 to 10 and 12 to 1. Content specific office hours are the content of the day. So they have done the exercises. They know everything about as much as Grace knows about the exercise, and they are there to help you if you get stuck on the exercise. So, and we welcome a suggestion. If content specific is not clear enough in the Keep Start Stop this evening, let us know. But yes, that is related to the content that you are doing for the day. Great question. Thank you, Beth. Any other questions? And if you haven't figured it out, I live in this room. So 24 hours a day, if you come in here, if you have a question, I'll probably be sitting here. So, okay, the breakout rooms are open. You should be able to see your rooms again. So we got Marsha P. Johnson, James Baldwin, Audrey Lord, Rashad Robinson, Roxanne Gay, and Alvin Ailey. Please head to your rooms and get started.
Thank you all for watching. For more information on SICSS-Howard Mathematica, visit our website, follow us on social media, and join our email list.